So what was one big thing that you learned from studying abroad?
I guess so. I'm a shy person, so studying abroad really taught me that, it's not that difficult to go and interact with people and have like a positive experience with that. I learned, of course, a lot about Japanese culture and a lot about, just how things are there, which is nice, and like their history. I guess not a lot of their history. When I was actually taking Japanese history, I didn't understand it at all, and I just
It's confusing.
did not pay attention. But yeah, I guess I learned about the language too,
Would you say that you're like much more fluent in Japanese now?
I would say that. So when I went to Japan, I had actually gotten to the point where I pretty much understood everything that was being said to me before I even went. But I would never speak it. Like I said, I'm a shy person, so like speaking it was like very difficult for me, even around my teacher. It was kind of difficult for me, like especially like I would know how to say something, but I'd be like too shy to say it at first. Being there, getting used to it, and like hearing it every day, speaking it, I got to a point where I wasn't. I still never initiated conversations like at all, but I got to a point where like being asked questions and responding wasn't hard. I ended up giving a speech at the pre-departure orientation for before returning home, which went well. And then I actually gave a speech in December at my school for their like foreign language program. And the speech was written for me, so I just had to read it.
But still, that's really hard. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't actually like actively like studying like vocabulary or grammar or characters unless like I had a school test on kanji. Then I would study them. I wasn't like actively studying Japanese. Besides, like if I had tests, I would go and learn all like the science words. But just being around and being able to speak it, I think my speaking ability became very great. Like by the end of it, when my family came over to like pick me up, we went around like touring, and there's one place I ordered shaved ice from this guy in Japanese, and he was so shocked. He asked me if I was Japanese. So yeah, no, I think everyone became like very good in Japanese by the time we went. The pre-departure orientation, like we were all speaking Japanese to each other, even like if we knew English. Me and like the kids from New Zealand were speaking in Japanese to each other and not English.
Do you mean at your closing ceremonies, like right before?
Yeah, like the closing pre-departure orientation where they had everyone come to like Tokyo again.
So you talked about like doing tests and studying for the tests in Japan, and I go to the Japanese school from where I'm from, and I know how competitive exams can be. So did you learn alongside of everybody else, like at the same pace, same level as them, or did you kind of have like your own type of class to learn at, or what kind of system was it for you?
My school, when I first got there, they said you don't have to take tests. You can just take the test you want to take. So I would switch classes 3 times, and the only time I had to take Japanese history was my first class. So when I first took tests, I took everything except Japanese history. My next classes, I wasn't taking Japanese history anymore, so I just took everything. Again, I actually can read. I could read kanji before I even got there. So it wasn't hard for me to like read what was going on. And my math it's now only, I guess, a year ahead, but when I went, it was 2 years ahead. And I was put in a first year class originally, so like math, I didn't even have to pay attention in class. I didn't pay attention in class. It was kind of bad. I had an easy time with the math there. But by the end of it, like I would study like hard for the test, and I was actually like scoring like second best in the class in Japanese classics by the end of it. So I mean, if you really like, push yourself and like learn the words, take the time to actually go and like learn what is going to appear on the test, I think you'll be able to handle it. Of course, not everyone can handle stuff like that. But the school will let you, I'm assuming will probably let you choose which test not to take, choose which test you want to take, let you not take tests if you don't want to.
At my school, we take like every season type of tests, like every semester we take one at the beginning of the semester and one at the end of the semester, so midterms and finals. And did you have to take those too? What the tests you took, were they more like pop quizzes or?
I got to take what tests I wanted, like I said. The tests, I guess I took pop quizzes, but like, they would have the week of exams for midterms and finals, and clubs would be canceled the week before for studying. And so I took midterms and finals, and it was the midterms and finals that I was scoring like well on, like very well on, but only because, like I had a club. With club canceled, I had the time to go and study for them. But of course, I'm assuming, if you're taking a class and you just realize that maybe your Japanese level isn't good enough, or you realize that, you aren't really interested in the subject matter and you don't want to take it for whatever reason, I'm sure you'll be allowed not to take it.
This doesn't really have to do with the program, but where did you learn your Japanese beforehand?
So I started by myself in 8th grade. I guess, no, the end of 7th grade, like the very end of 7th grade I started. Started by myself. I found a Japanese teacher, like a private tutor, and I took lessons with her once a week. But mostly what I did is within the first year, I learned all of verb conjugations in like major grammar points. And then I would spend like 2 hours every day learning vocabulary, or I would buy, Japanese manga, like manga written in Japanese that I was interested in, and I would go through it, and the words I didn't know I'd write down, and then I would go in to study those words. And then I would watch like dramas on Netflix. I would watch them subbed in Japanese. Because if you watch Japanese dramas on Netflix, you can actually watch them subbed in Japanese, which is really nice. I think you can probably do that with a lot of animes too, but definitely dramas, I know you can do it for certain. So I suggest, especially like dramas, you'll be reading it and listening at the same time, so you'll be able to get better at reading and listening. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're like interesting and fun to watch.
What was the reason you wanted to go to Japan to study abroad?
So I've loved like Japanese games since I was like little, like even like Pokemon I really loved. My dad would play Japanese role-playing games like Final Fantasy, and I loved to watch those and just listen to stories. And so because I was so into those through elementary school, when I got to like middle school, I guess at the end of elementary school, I started watching like anime and reading manga as well. And I started getting into like drawing manga and anime stuff. And so an artist I followed on Instagram actually went and studied abroad to Japan for a year. And, seeing that, I became like very interested. I loved, like manga and stuff and like their entertainment. I just realized, I could study abroad to Japan, and I had my heart set on it since like 6th grade.
So you were like preparing like years before.
Yeah. I think I started learning Japanese so I would be able to study abroad, not the other way around.
Do you mind if I interject with a question? I want to know, why did you decide to do it in high school rather than just wait until college?
I honestly don't know. It's probably the person I followed on Instagram did in high school. And animes of course always happen in high school.
Wow.
That's probably the main reason, or maybe I just couldn't wait. I honestly don't know why I couldn't wait. I just had my heart set on going like junior year for some reason. Don't know why.
How would you describe your school life in Japan?
Like my daily routine, or just like a review of how good it was?
A daily routine.
Daily routine. Okay, so my school started 8:30, I guess, like around that time. So I would wake up at like 7:15. I would eat breakfast, get ready. And then my host family's house was very close to my school. So it was like a 20-minute walk or like a 10-minute bike ride. So me and my host sister would ride our bikes to school. I would take classes, of course. And my school did it. There were like three different classes, like main classes. So they had a, regular track. They had like an advanced track. They had like a super advanced track, and then foreign language. And depending on like what track you were in, determined like how many periods you had on what days. So you had either 6 or 7 50-minute long periods. And then each day they had different like subjects. So it's not like in America where a lot of schools you have like every day is the same schedule. It's like you would have, maybe math on Wednesday at this period, and then, like Thursday you'd have like health on that same period. Then after school, I joined the kendo club. So I would go do kendo for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. It depends on how many periods that I had that day. And then I would go home, have dinner as soon as I got home. It was like 7 o'clock by the time I got home, and like take a bath and then go to sleep. So I didn't really have time to study a lot.
During midterms, how many hours do you think per day did you study?
It really depended on the subject, or like how determined I was to get good grades. So the last midterms that I did, I was very determined to do very well. So I started, like I said earlier, the week before tests, we didn't have club. So you would go straight home, or you'd stay after and you would study. So on those days, I'd probably study like 2 or 3 hours after school, probably only like 2 hours. And then just like what I needed to get, what I couldn't study on the week of the test. And then midterms, like the week of midterms at my school, they would have like 2 or 3 tests in the morning, and then you would have no school after that. Like you were supposed to just go straight home and study. And on those days, I'd probably study like 4 or 5 hours. And I think on the weekends, I probably studied 4 hours. Of course, like you don't have to like actually take the test, so you can choose, not to take the test and have that weight off your shoulders and not study like a maniac like I was doing. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do well, I think that's the amount of hours you should study. And I didn't pull all-nighters like a lot of the Japanese kids were doing, and I actually scored better than them. So get sleep before you take tests is all I can say.
So how did your host family act while you were during test season?
My host sister went to the same school, so when it was testing time for me, it was testing time for her. And I had my study habits were a lot better than my host sister's. So, I would study, like hours, and then like a few hours, like I'd get home, I would study, and then at like 10 o'clock, I'd go to bed. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to be like up, like studying. My host sister would get home, not study. When it became like 10 o'clock, would start studying, go to bed at 3 a.m., wake up, go to school, and then so we didn't have classes in the afternoon on test week, so because she was staying up all night to study, instead of getting home and studying in that afternoon, she would sleep in the afternoon and then study in the night. So my host family was actually good about it and didn't give like weird comments like, why is Maddy studying but not you? They were actually really nice about it. But yeah, there were definitely times where like my host dad would like see me studying and like going to bed at like a proper time and would like suggest heavily to my host sister that that's what she should be doing. Because they knew that I didn't even really have to take tests. They were very calm about me and my study habits. Not so much about my host sister and her study habits, but.
And she was a year older than you?
My birthday's in May, so the Japanese school year starts in April. So when I got there, like I said, I was going my junior year, so that's the second year of Japanese high school. But when I got there, I was actually put in a first-year class. So my host sister was born the same year as me, but in October. So if it was America, we'd be in different grades, but in Japan, we're in the same grade.
Oh, okay.
So I guess she was the same age as me, or a year younger, depending on how you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. But my first class and my last class I was in the same class as her. So the tests we were taking were even the same for most of the time I was there.